This lesson is a review of the solving equation steps that you learned in 8th grade. It's just a refresher to get us started on Unit 2. So my first example is y plus 3 equals 10. Your goal when you're solving equations is to get your variable by itself. So if you want to box the variable, if that helps you, go for it. A lot of other people like to draw in an algebra wall. So if you like to draw that where your equal to sign is, that might help you stay a little bit organized. But your goal is to get y by itself on this problem. And so we need to get rid of the plus 3. So when you're doing these solving steps, you need to always remember that you're going to do the opposite operation. The opposite of adding 3 is to subtract 3 on both sides. When we do that, 10 minus 3 gives me 7. You can always check this by plugging it back in. If I plug 7 in for y, then 7 plus 3 equals 10, which we know is true. My second example is t minus 9 equals 11. We're trying to get t by itself on this one. So if you draw on your algebra wall, I need to move over the minus 9. Well, the opposite of subtracting 9 is to add 9. When I add that to both sides, it cancels on the left, and I'm left with t. On the right, 11 plus 9 means t is 20. Again, you can check this by plugging it back in. If I plug in 20 for t, 20 minus 9 is 11, so I know I got it right. Go ahead and pause the video, try these 4, and then we'll check it. For number 1, to get a by itself, the opposite of adding 6 is to subtract 6 over. It cancels on the left, and you're left with a. 17 minus 6 means a is 11. For number 2, we're trying to get b by itself. The opposite of subtracting 17 is to add it on both sides. When you do that, you should have gotten that b equals 29. For number 3, we're trying to get x by itself. The opposite of adding 2 is to subtract 2. Be careful with your signs here. Negative 3 minus 2, those are both negative, gives me negative 5 for x. And then finally, for number 4, to get y by itself, the opposite of subtracting 4 is to add 4. Be careful with your signs. Negative 6 plus 4 means y is negative 2. The next type you're going to see is multiplying and dividing. So my first example for multiplying is 8x equals 56. In order to get x by itself here, the opposite of multiplying by 8 is to divide by 8. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8. Whatever you do to the left side, you have to do to the right side to keep it equal. 8 divided by 8 cancels and leaves me with x on the left. 56 divided by 8 gives me 7. You can check this just like the other ones by plugging it back in. If I plug in 7 for x, 8 times 7 is 56, so I know I got it right. Next, we'll do an example with division. On this problem, we have a divided by 5 equals 12. We're trying to get a by itself. Well, the opposite of dividing by 5 is to multiply by 5, so we're going to multiply both the left and the right by 5. On this one, 5 over 5 cancels, and we're left with a, and then 12 times 5 gives me 60. To check this, I can plug this back in. 60 divided by 5 does equal 12, so I know I did it correctly. Another type that you're going to see is fractions in front of your variable. So there's two different ways you can solve these. First, you can just get rid of the denominator, or second, you can multiply by the reciprocal. I'll show you both ways here. So your first option is to just get rid of the 5, get rid of your denominator of 5, and the way you would do that is by multiplying both sides by 5. When you do this, 5 over 5 cancels and we're left with 3t. 6 times 5 gives me 30. From here, now I just need to divide the 3, so t equals 10. That's one option to solve this problem. The other option is to multiply by what we call the reciprocal. Your reciprocal is basically your fraction flipped. So instead of using 3 over 5, we would use 5 over 3. By doing this, 5 over 5 and 3 over 3 cancel on the left, and you're left with t. On the right, 6 times 5 is 30, and 30 over 3 is 10. You can choose the method that you like the best. Either way, you're going to get 10 for your answer. Again, you can always check these by plugging it back in. If I plug in 10 for t, 10 is the same thing as 10 over 1. So 3 times 10 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5, and I know 30 divided by 5 is 6, so I did it correctly. This next one is very similar. I'm going to use the reciprocal method here. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 3 over 2. When I do that, 3 over 3 and 2 over 2 cancel on the left, and on the right, 12 is the same thing as 12 over 1. 12 times 3 is 36, 1 times 2 is 2, and 36 over 2 simplifies to 18. To check this, I'm going to plug in 18. 2/3 times 18 equals 12. Well, 18 is the same thing as 18 over 1. 18 times 2 is 36, and 36 over 3 does equal 12. Go ahead and pause the video, try these 4, and then we'll check. On number 5, to get x by itself, the opposite of multiplying by 3 is to divide by 3. So you should have gotten x equals 13. On number 6, that is something funky. Let's change that to just b over 4 equals 13. Ignore the m. Sorry about that. The opposite of dividing by 4 is to multiply by 4. So the 4's cancel on the left. And on the right, 13 times 4 gives us 52. Number 7, to get rid of the 4, that is 4 times x, so the opposite is to divide by 4. Be careful with your signs. Negative 24 divided by 4 is negative 6. And then finally, on number 8, we have a fraction here. I'm going to use the reciprocal method. You could also use the denominator method. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 8 over 3. I'm taking the negative with it to cancel it out because we know that a negative times a negative will give us a positive. So from here, on the left, my negative cancels, my 8 cancels, and my 3 cancels, leaving me with m. On the right, 21 times negative 8 is negative, 168. And 1 times 3 is 3. This is going to reduce to, let's see, to 56. So my final answer on this one would be negative 56. Be careful with your signs on that. Okay, you're also going to see word problems when you're trying to solve equations. So this one says a rectangular trampoline has an area of 156 square feet. The length of the trampoline is 12 feet. What is the width? So if you think about area of a rectangle, we know that the area of a rectangle is found by multiplying the length times the width. We have been given the area, it's 156, and we have also been given the length, which is 12. So we're going to plug in what we know. A is 156, and L is 12. And then we're going to find what we don't know. So to find the width, we need to move the 12 to the other side. And to do that, we're going to divide both sides by 12, which gives us 156 divided by 12, which comes out to 13. So my width on this one is 13. We're now going to move on to two-step equation. So we're just going to add one more step. On this one, my example is 3x plus 7 equals 19. Your goal is still to get x by itself, and you can still draw in your algebra wall like you did on the other ones. But now we have a 3 in front of the x, and we have a plus 7. You always want to move the addition and subtraction first before you move the coefficient, or the number in front. In this case, we need to move the plus 7 before we do anything else. So the opposite of adding 7 is to subtract 7 on both sides. When you do that, the 7's cancel on the left, and you're left with 3x. On the right, 19 minus 7 gives me 12. Now we're back to our one-step equation, 3x equals 12. To get rid of 3 is being multiplied by x, we are going to divide both sides by 3. My final answer here is 4. You can check these just like you did the others. If I plug 4 in for x, I have 3 times 4 plus 7 equals 19. Well, 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 plus 7 does equal 19. So I know I did it correctly. Go ahead and try 9 and 10, and then we'll check it. On number 9, you're trying to get r by itself. Your first step is to add 12 on both sides, and then r divided by 4 is going to equal 7, because negative 5 plus 12 is positive 7. Now I need to get rid of the over 4, so the opposite of dividing by 4 is to multiply both sides by 4. When you do that, the 4's cancel on the left, leaving you with r, and on the right, 7 times 4 is 28. On number 10, your first step is to move over the 14. The opposite of subtracting 14 is to add 14 to both sides. When you do that, 7k is equal to 56. Now we need to get rid of the 7. The opposite of multiplying by 7 is to divide by 7. So k equals 8. All right, on this example, we have 4a plus 3a equals 63. Before we try to get a by itself, you always want to combine like terms. So on this one, 4a plus 3a is going to become 7a. That was my first step. Now my second step is to get rid of the 7. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7 to get a equals 9. Go ahead and try these two, pause the video, and then we'll check. On number 11, 5z plus 4z is 9z. To get rid of the 9, we divide both sides by 9 to get z equals 4. 12 is very similar. 5b minus 2b is 3b. And then I divide both sides by 3 to get b equals 3. We're going to finish with 2 word problems. So on the first example, the output of a function is 2 more than 4 times the input. Find the input when the output is 14. My advice on this is to take it one word at a time. So we know from Unit 1 that output means y. Y is means y equals. 2 more than means we have 2 plus 4 times the input. Remember, input means x, so that means we have 4 times x. Here is my equation based off the first sentence. Then it says find the input, so we're trying to find x when the output, y, is 14. So they have given us y, we need to find x. This is very similar to the lesson we did on function notation. I'm going to plug in 14 for y, and then I'm going to solve for x. So my first step is to subtract 2. Then I'm going to divide by 4. So x equals 3. My input is 3. Go ahead and try this last problem. Pause the video and then we'll check it. For this problem, the output is 3 less than 6 times the input. You have to be really careful with the words less than. This does not mean 3 minus. Instead, this means minus 3. So you're actually going to subtract 3 from 6 times the input. Remember, 3 less than means minus 3, not 3 minus. There is a difference. Then it tells us that the output is 15. So I'm going to plug in 15 for y. And then to get x by itself, my first step is to add 3 on both sides. Then to get rid of the 6, we're going to divide by 6 on both sides, where x equals 3. My input is 3. This lesson was probably a review for you because you have seen this in 8th grade, but it's always a good idea to freshen up on your solving skills because it's only going to get more challenging from here.